Yeah, so we're gonna kind of go like what last time we talked about SQL. We went through that really quickly. Technically, section 8 would be like the next thing, which we're technically kind of behind on. But I'm actually gonna skip over section 8, at least talking about it in like study group, just because it's not necessarily needed for the project coming up. It's just another kind of method of storing data and stuff like that. So we can discuss this more in the future. And as you probably saw too, it's a relatively short section in the curriculum, partly because it's just there's a lot you can do. And one thing we have, I think we're using MongoDB. MongoDB is one form of NoSQL. Basically, NoSQL. Do you guys actually know what NoSQL stands for by chance? It stands for not only SQL. So basically, it's like SQL plus everything else. And there's a reason why we might use NoSQL. It basically allows you to have other data formats that are not like this nice tabular form. But maybe we'll talk about that in the future. But we're going to go over review some SQL stuff, and then we'll go right into section 9, which is going to be APIs, JSON, and all that good stuff. Okay, which will be closely related to a lot of the stuff you'll do for the final project, for this module project, I should say. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen. I can share it. Oops. All right, Zoom likes to move around my windows. There we go. Okay, cool. Oh, good. Zoom didn't move you guys all crazily. Sometimes Zoom will like throw you guys onto like a far window off to the side and I can't find you. All right, so we're just gonna kind of go over some advanced, like this is like on the notebook's advanced topics. So if you guys remember, we did some like intro to SQL, we did some using SQL, you know, like kind of making database or tables on database and stuff like that. We talked a little bit about joins, aggregation. There's a whole lot of stuff you can do to practice SQL. I think someone else too, I think Edward actually shared on earlier today on like Slack, some practice as well. So like you can definitely find some good practice and stuff. And I think the more you kind of do it, in general, you kind of get a good feel for it. So at this point, you probably feel pretty comfortable. It's like, okay, select shirt from closet where clean equals 1 and color equals navy. You can probably understand like, you know, what that is. And that's actually, you know, a relatively valid SQL query, assuming that all of these things exist and stuff like that. So it's kind of fun to, you know, get a feel for this and you start seeing and reading it. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of go through some things that we can do. So first thing is like getting some data, right? So you'll notice right here, I have this import Victor SQL functions as VSF, and you're like, whoa, like what is this, you know, module and stuff like this. So if you guys haven't really figured this out, you can actually make your own modules as well. So this is where like if you're making these same like functions over and over again, especially if you're working with the same database, it might be worth making these separate modules. And we'll see this again in APIs today. So just to kind of show you where this comes from, all it is, if I go over to advanced topics, this path, you'll see, where is it, .py, Victor's underscore SQL underscore functions.py. So I can actually create these functions right here. And this is going to look very intimidating by itself. Know this object-oriented programming. This might be something we can talk about in office hours and stuff. But basically, I can create my own set of functions stuff. You can actually make modules that look much simpler than this. You can just have variables. I'll show one later today in APIs. But the idea here is things that we've kind of already seen a little bit when I was playing around with SQL. But it's like using SQL to query and stuff like this, to create data frames, stuff like that. So it makes it a little bit easier for me to function. All right. So as you guys saw before, I have a database, which remember in this case is just a file, data.sqlite. And you can see here, I think this is the actual database right here. It's from the curriculum. So I'm just going to load that in there. So now I have the database set, and I just put it as V. So I don't know, I guess I felt like using V when I wrote this. And you get all tables, v.get tables. So now actually I have all these tables. So it's kind of cool. Oh, also really cool, if you document, right, like get tables like this, you have this amazing thing where you can do Shift Tab and it'll actually show you your doc string. So the more information ahead of time you actually document your stuff, the easier it's going to be for later on. For example, I wrote this maybe like 6 months ago when I first like wrote this lesson. So I might not remember exactly what get tables is. And you can see here, depending how past Victor, you know, documented it, return tables with pandas data frame from the connected database. So like, okay, cool. So if I do this now, I should see a data frame. And there we go. You can see all the table names in data frame format. So it's a little bit easier for me to navigate and stuff. In this case, I'm just going through all these parts. You can see here, basically, I'm going to select all the information from each table, which to be honest is probably not like the best way to do this necessarily. I actually don't even know why I did it this way. Let's see. Let's check out data. There you go. You can see, I guess I was trying to put it into like a nice like format and stuff like this. I'm not really sure why I did it this way. I might have been copying something that was in the curriculum from before just to kind of show you guys. But you can see here, I have the query, select star from. No, I'm using an F string here. F strings are really amazing. Remember, you don't have to do the dot format or the percent sign or any weird stuff. You can just call this variable directly in here. I'm getting table name in all tables dot name. So I'm just getting basically all of these things and just going through order details, replacing order details in here, getting the query, using SQL to dequery, basically get a data frame. I'm just going to data. Oh, okay, that makes sense now. So if I want to see the data frame for orders, I'm going to take this data frame. It's going to save this data frame. So I can just pull up and there's the full table. So it's going to be kind of useful if you wanted to like load this in. Obviously, if this database is very, very large, you probably wouldn't want to just do all of this, select star and then everything, because obviously you'd store everything in memory and it probably wouldn't be the greatest thing. Okay, very cool. So you can kind of see a little bit, kind of play around this, and you can see I can do a little quick stuff like very quick exploration. In this case, I have each table name and then exploring each, basically just kind of showing the head, right? As well as some information with .describe. So this is kind of like the pandas, exploration kind of stuff, but now I'm using a SQL database. So it's something probably like I might feel more comfortable using a data frame versus like trying to deal with SQL and then trying to load with that stuff. Feels more natural. Okay, so cool. So nothing pretty new here from like, at least from last time. Sound pretty good. Any overall questions on like understanding it? Okay, yeah. So you can see already, like we're kind of piling things on top. As you have Python, now we have pandas, now we have SQL, and you're just putting all these things together. So for example, you can see this data.items dictionary. All right, I promised myself, I don't know if you guys all heard this. I told Mike I was gonna only take 15 minutes and then we're gonna move on to section 9. So I only got 5 minutes left, so I'm gonna kind of go right through. All right, so one thing I want to talk about execution order, because if you were to rewrite SQL in like a way that actually like how it works, you probably wouldn't put select first. So this is like a SQL query with select statements from, where, group by, where we have aggregations and stuff like this. And the way SQL actually like executes this stuff, it starts with the from part. It basically says from what table. So it looks at from, says, okay, I have table 1, I'm going to join table 2 based on this information, and do all that stuff, right? And pull it in. It's like, oh, these are all the tables. Then it goes on to where it says, okay, I have all these tables. Now I'm going to use a condition to say, okay, I only want the results that satisfies these conditions. In this case, table 1.column 1 is greater than 0. Okay. And then the next thing it goes is group by. Then from group by, it's like, okay, it's got all these results from like this guy right here. And it says, okay, I'm going to group it by table 2.column 1. So if you understand like the execution order, it becomes a little bit easier, like why these things can come out. Because then you'll notice too, is there's group by and then having. So having's a little more advanced. I know the curriculum kind of mentions it, but having just know is kind of like just another kind of similar to where, but having actually goes after the execution, or sorry, not execution, aggregation. So note that if you try to doing where like you're already doing like a count, for example, you couldn't actually do anything with it. Like it would say, oh, I can't do that. So having allows you basically to do another kind of conditional after doing aggregation, which is why it comes after group by. Okay. And then you can see afterwards that, then we actually select. So note that this select rate, yeah, go ahead.
Where do you, could you do anything that you could do for having where?
Not necessarily. So wait, repeat that one more time just for make sure I have
do anything that you could do with a having with a where.
No, because having will actually only, because having happens after aggregation, you can do things after the aggregation that are specific to aggregation. Then if you try doing that with where wouldn't know what to do, even though it would seem like where would have some ability to like do this conditional. Having is actually something, for example, like if you wanted to look at the average is greater than 3, it's like you could put that in having. It's like, okay, average of table 2, column 1 is greater than 3. It might say, oh, I can't do that. Like you can't do that stuff, where having will allow you to do that. Mm-hmm. Makes sense?
Right, got it, thanks.
No problem. Okay, and then the next part is select. So note that select actually comes almost at the bottom here. So if I were to like rewrite SQL, I would put select like, I'd go from, where, group by, having, and then like select, right? Because then after all this information, then you're selecting which ones. Note that after select, that's when you start getting order by and then limit. Limit will basically say, okay, only return these results. But note that because limit makes it sound like, oh, you're only getting 5 results, that should be really quick. Well, the problem is it's got to do all of these parts first in general. So in general, but what will happen is if you try to do like, oh, I know there's going to be like 1 million results, but I'm only going to do limit 5, it still might take a long time because of the way the execution order comes through. In some cases, the SQL Server might try to optimize it, but in general, you shouldn't rely on limit to like reduce the amount of work. Okay, cool. Any questions on all this? I kind of went through this really quickly, but hopefully this is pretty good.
Is there like a quick place that just has that execution order? Just think I want that like right by me.
Yeah, I guess screenshot this right now. I don't know. That's the best I got for you guys right now. I'll send it on here. I'll just send it to you guys through the chat too. There you go. I sent you guys on the Zoom chat. So that's the order. Yeah, SQL, again, is a command language, so it's kind of weird because it's actually executed by the server. So the server will actually try to optimize some of these things too. So for example, if you do like an on, you can actually do multiple things, conditions on, and then have an where. It will try to optimize it, but sometimes because if you try doing from and then the condition here, and then trying to do where, you actually get different results, even though you would think they'd be the same. So that's why execution order matters. Okay.